The moment didn't feel real at first. In the middle of one of the most explosive eras hip-hop has seen in years, where every bar felt like a warning shot and every move was dissected like evidence in a trial, one voice chose silence over noise, reflection over reaction, and truth over pride. That voice was J. Cole. And now, in a rare moment of openness, he's finally explaining what really happened behind the scenes, what he felt in the heat of it all, and why he made a decision that shocked the entire culture. By the way, welcome to Celebrity Rap Life, where the spotlight never fades, comebacks are built from chaos, and every headline tells a deeper story. Like, subscribe, and stay locked in, because the story is about to unfold. Because, let's be honest, when everything between Drake and Kendrick Lamar started escalating, nobody expected Cole to step back. If anything, fans thought this was the moment for the so-called Big Three to finally collide in a way that would define a generation. But instead of leaning into the chaos, Cole did something almost unheard of in rap. He apologized, not quietly, not behind closed doors, but publicly, on stage, in front of thousands of people. Now he's finally putting words to that moment. Sitting down in a rare interview, Cole looks calm, grounded, almost untouched by the storm that surrounded him. But when he begins to speak, you can tell this wasn't a simple decision. This wasn't about ducking competition or avoiding smoke. It was something deeper, something personal, something that cut to the core of who he is as an artist and as a man. He starts by addressing the obvious tension, the elephant in the room that everyone's been talking about for months. Drake and Kendrick Lamar, two artists who've shaped modern hip-hop in completely different ways, now locked in a feud that has divided fans, sparked debates, and turned timelines into battlegrounds. And Cole doesn't pick a side. Instead, he says something that feels almost out of place in a culture that thrives on rivalry. He says he has genuine love for both of them. Not industry love, not surface-level respect, but real human love. The kind that makes it hard to sit back and watch people tear each other down. He explains how uncomfortable it felt seeing the world turn this into a choice, like you had to defend one by destroying the other, like appreciation couldn't exist without comparison, and for him, that never sat right. Because to him, these aren't just competitors. These are people he's shared moments with, built relationships with, grown alongside, and watching that get reduced to sides and teams felt wrong. That alone already sets the tone, but then he goes deeper. He takes it back to the moment everything shifted for him. Dreamville Fest, April 2024. The stage was set, the crowd was massive, and the energy was high. But behind all of that, there was something building inside him that nobody could see. Just days before that performance, he had released 7-Minute Drill, a track aimed at Kendrick. At the time, it felt like the right move. The culture was calling for it, the moment demanded it, and the expectations were loud. But almost immediately after, something didn't feel right. He describes it like a realization creeping in, slowly at first, then all at once. He started to feel like the words he put out didn't reflect how he truly felt, like he had stepped into a version of himself that wasn't real. And that feeling didn't go away. It sat with him, it grew louder, it became impossible to ignore. Then came the moment that changed everything. About an hour before he was supposed to go on stage, it hit him, not subtly, not quietly, but in a way he describes as loud and undeniable, like a voice cutting through all the noise and forcing him to confront the truth. He realized he had a choice. He could continue down the path that was expected of him, keep feeding into the narrative, keep playing the role, keep the momentum going, or he could step out of it completely and say what he actually believed. And what he believed was simple. He didn't mean what he said in that diss track. That realization alone is heavy. In a genre where pride is everything, where backing down is often seen as weakness, admitting something like that takes a different kind of strength. And Cole knew exactly what it would look like. He knew the headlines, the memes, the criticism that would follow. But in that moment, none of that mattered more than being honest with himself. So he made the decision. He walked out on that stage and did something nobody expected. He apologized, not just for the track, but for misrepresenting himself, for contributing to a narrative that didn't align with his truth, for giving energy to something he didn't actually stand behind. And in his own words, it felt like a release, like he had been carrying something that didn't belong to him and finally put it down. He even describes it as a moment of clarity, almost spiritual in a way, like he was being guided toward the right decision, even if it didn't make sense in the moment. And when he made that choice, it felt right immediately. That's something that stands out in the way he tells it. There's no regret in his voice, no hesitation, just certainty. But what makes this even more interesting is how he frames the bigger picture. Because for Cole, this wasn't just about one track or one moment, it was about the direction the entire situation was heading. He talks about how quickly things can spiral, how easily competition can turn into division, and how narratives can take on their own life. And he didn't want to be part of that. He didn't want to add fuel to something that was already burning out of control. He didn't want to create or reinforce negative perceptions about someone he actually respects. And most importantly, he didn't want to lose himself in the process. That's a level of self-awareness that's rare, especially in moments like this. Because let's be real, the easier path would have been to stay in it, to ride the wave, to keep the attention, to give the fans what they wanted. But Cole chose the harder path, the one that required him to step back, take criticism, and stand alone in his decision. And even now, he stands by it. He makes it clear that this wasn't about fear. It wasn't about avoiding competition or doubting his abilities. It was about alignment, about making sure that what he puts out into the world actually reflects who he is. And that's something he refuses to compromise. As the interview continues, you start to see a bigger picture forming. This isn't just a story about a rap feud or a single apology. It's a story about growth, about understanding your place, your voice, and your values in an environment that constantly pushes you to react instead of reflect. Cole talks about how easy it is to get caught up in the moment, especially when the entire world is watching and expecting something from you. But he also talks about the importance of stepping back and asking yourself one simple question: is this really me? And if the answer is no, then nothing else matters. That's the principle that guided his decision, and it's the reason he can sit there now, months later, and speak about it with clarity and confidence. Meanwhile, the world around him continues to debate, argue, and analyze every detail of the Drake and Kendrick situation. Fans pick sides, narratives shift, and the noise never really stops. But Cole exists outside of that now, not because he doesn't care, but because he chose not to let it define him. And maybe that's the most powerful part of this entire story. In a moment where everything was pulling him toward conflict, he chose peace. In a culture that often rewards aggression, he chose honesty. And in an industry where image can be everything, he chose authenticity. That doesn't mean everyone agrees with him. It doesn't mean everyone understands his decision. But it does mean one thing: he stayed true to himself. And in the end, that's something no one can take away from him. As the interview wraps up, there's a sense that this chapter, while significant, is just one part of a much larger journey. Cole isn't stuck in that moment. He's moved forward, continuing to create, to evolve, and to define his legacy on his own terms. But the impact of what he did still lingers, because whether people admit it or not, that moment forced a conversation about authenticity, about integrity, about what it really means to stand on your beliefs in a world that constantly challenges them. And maybe, just maybe, it also showed that there's more than one way to be strong. Not every battle has to be fought. Not every challenge has to be accepted. And sometimes the most powerful move you can make is the one nobody expects. For J. Cole, that move was an apology. And in a time where everything felt loud, aggressive, and divided, that quiet moment of honesty ended up speaking louder than anything else. Welcome to the culture. Hit subscribe, stay curious, and never stop listening.